Hare Krishna. So, we could speak on different topics, but let's see what is most relevant and most appropriate for this morning. What do you do normally?
We pick Bhagavad Gita up.
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, we just.
Okay, let's Bhagavad Gita then.
Okay. Honey? No, Saturday morning, no Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is good.
All right. Thank you.
So if you can give them out to this.
So Bhagavad Gita, of course, has many topics, but some time ago, and I'm not sure if we've done that in commentary, on the request of the devotees, I've developed a series of training courses based on practical applications of Bhagavad Gita. And so devotees wanted the whole Bhagavad Gita, so I picked one theme from each chapter. As we know, Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 main parts, right?
Yes.
Those of you who did a little study, you would know that 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are divided into 3 sections, right? First 6 chapters are entitled Karma Yoga, middle Bhakti Yoga, and last 6 chapters Jnana Yoga. And so Karma Yoga means dedicating our activities for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, in the service of the Supreme Lord, and definitely if you serve God, you can't really fail, right? Failure is something which does not exist in Vaishnava terminology. And maybe just a pillar of success or something. And therefore I gave the title to Karma Yoga section, Yoga of Success. And you know that there is no failure in Bhakti. That's explained in the very beginning, right? Bhagavad Gita 240. That those who are on this path, you know, that they can't really fail. Even little effort never goes in vain and saves one from the greatest fears in life, from the biggest troubles. And so, looking at the success, and success as defined in Bhagavad Gita is all, you know, comprehensive, and sometimes we think of spiritual as disconnected from social, but it is not true, because this is what Arjuna was thinking, that I want to be spiritual, right? And I don't want to fight, because fighting is material business and a bloody business. And I'm not interested in wealth and power and fame. These are all materialistic things, right? And so I will tell Krishna that I'm giving up. I'm renouncing all the fruits, and I want to be a perfectly spiritual person. And he expected Krishna's support, but rather Krishna told him, that's all nonsense. It's good that you're not interested, but you have to understand that you should not be acting for yourself, or if you're not getting anything, you should not be acting at all. Both of these things, Bhoga, Yaga, Isha, Dvesha, are false. But you should dedicate all activities unto me and gain everything, but not for yourself, but for me. And so then Prabhupada explains, once Arjuna understood that, he took it up. So we can see what Bhagavad Gita is really promoting is professional spirituality outside of religious, ritualistic performances, right? And unfortunately, even today in ISKCON, we understand that Krishna consciousness is limited to religious, ritualistic performances you do once in a while on Saturday morning, right? You put on your tilak and you dress in your religious dress, and you go to the temple and you do some religious rituals, and this is where Krishna consciousness ends, right? And then you have this karmi life or materialistic life operating in the material world, and it has nothing to do with my Krishna consciousness, right? It's just the way I live, it's just the way I'm making money. It's just something to survive, but you know, I'm not really interested in that. So this disconnect is in Sanskrit defined as ayoga. Ayoga. And connection means yoga. So if we are practicing yoga, Bhakti yoga is also yoga, plus it's the topmost yoga. We need to connect. We need to connect our professional and spiritual lives. So this is what basically the essence of karma yoga is. How to connect your professional and your spiritual life. And of course, many times it's very hard to connect because we're not really doing what we should be doing in our lives. We just sell ourselves short for, you know, just making a living just to survive in this world, and we can't really put our heart into what we're doing, and in this way it's kind of very sophisticated way to torture yourself. Doing something you hate doing just to get little money out of it, right? First of all, it's artificial. Second of all, it's fruitive, right? And Bhagavad Gita advocates that we should not be attached to the fruits of action, right? And how can you not be attached to the results of your work if you need the results? Anyone has any idea? What's the only option, possible option, how to act and yet be detached?
Krishna say do it as a matter of duty.
Matter of duty, but what does it mean? What is duty? And this is really interesting question. What is duty? What is dharma? So Srila Prabhupada explains that dharma is an intrinsic nature of the soul, right? And so in the same way as water is wet and sugar is sweet and fire is hot, so in the same way dharma is, well, generally it is to serve, right? But how do you serve? There are so many things in this world. They are serving us, right? Like the floor is serving us by holding us, and the roof is serving us by protecting us, and the walls from the sun and rain, and walls are serving us by protecting from the winds, etc., right? And electricity is serving us by providing light at night. And so we can see that even though it's general principle that Dharma means service, but there are so many varieties of services. So in the same way, we are the same spirit souls, but as Srila Prabhupada was saying, variety is the mother of enjoyment. Krishna creates us all very different, right? That you can see, even in this room, you wouldn't really be able to find two individuals who are exactly identical. Even twins are not exactly identical, right? That it's so funny that when you go to Mayapur and you see Jananivas and Pankajamri Prabhus, and it's hard to distinguish them, right, from one another. But if you've been to Mayapur for a while, like Narahari Prabhu has been there for a while, 10 years, right? And because I started spending longer times, few weeks at a time, few months at a time in Mayapur, you know, we're not going to be mistaking one for the other, right? Why? Because if you look closer, there are tons of differences between them, even externally. Like someone has larger shika, another one has thinner shika, and someone's body is bigger and the other's body is bigger, and someone's ears are larger and others' ears are smaller, etc. So, you know, if you look at the details, you see so many differences, and even characters. Like Jananivas Prabhu himself defines himself as a Brahmana by nature, and Pankajamri Prabhu says, my prominent nature is a Kshatriya, right? And so, even twins are so different from each other, what to speak of everybody else. So you wouldn't find two individuals who are absolutely the same. So, and Krishna creates us all differently. That means we have different natures. And we have to figure out how to use that nature completely in Krishna's service. And that's the secret of success, to be fully engaged in Krishna's service. And the advantage of being fully engaged is that you enjoy that. If you do what you were born for, you enjoy the activity itself. Like Arjuna, anyone knows how did Arjuna become known as Gudakesh? Anyone knows that story from Mahabharata? How did Arjuna ended up getting the name Gudakesh, the conqueror of sleep? How did he conquer the sleep? Because it was the fact that Arjuna hardly slept at all. But what was the reason for that? Did he got like permanent insomnia or something?
Yeah.
What happened to Arjuna? How did he conquer the sleep? No one knows? How many of you would like to know?
All of us.
Okay. So, according to Mahabharata, Arjuna was really obsessed with the desire, because he is a Kshatriya, right? And Kshatriya means very ambitious and never settling for mediocre results, and always striving for the best. And so he wanted to become the best archer on the planet. And it's pretty hard, because, you know, there are many good archers, many excellent archers, and if you want to become best of the best, that takes a lot of training and practice. And so basically Arjuna was practicing from morning till night, from sun sunrise to the sunset. Hare Krishna. He was practicing his archery, and only in the dark he was coming back. And as we know, his military guru was Dronacharya, and Dronacharya's son was Abhimanyu. Ashwatthama, yeah. And funny enough, they were pretty close with Arjuna at the time. And then basically after all these long hours of practice, he would come to take his meal. You know, he didn't want to like break his practices even for prasadam. And so he was basically, you know, like all day long fasting from food and water and anything else just to continue his practices of archery. You know, like it says, if you invest 10,000 hours into anything, you can achieve excellence. So Arjuna invested much more than 10,000 hours into his archery. This is how he became good as he was. But then, after he was taking his meal in the dark, yeah, that one day something happened. I can't remember the details, but you know, like normally he would take his late dinner.
Bhimsen was eating in the dark.
Bhimsen
was eating in the dark. Arjuna asked him, how are you able to do this?
Okay.
And he said, because I know where my mouth is and I know where my hand is. So I can do that. So Arjuna learned to shoot in the dark.
That's
before
right.
Dronacharya taught him, based on, that's one of the, you know, the thing.
Yeah. And so when Arjuna realized that even in the dark he can easily put his foot in the mouth, you know, foot being the like arrow and mouth being like a target. Because, you know, like when you're so obsessed with what you are doing, you compare everything with that, right? Like devotees are so obsessed with Krishna consciousness, they see everything in connection with Krishna. And so he said, you know, if I can put my food in the mouth in the dark, I can probably manage to, you know, hit the target with the arrow in the dark also. And he became obsessed with that idea. You know, if I want to become the best, I should be able to shoot in the dark and hit the target without any light. And just imagine, you know, like what kind of sensory acuity he had to develop for that. But he was practicing in a pitch dark, shooting the arrows. And basically, you know, he was practicing day and night. And this is how he became the best archer in the world. And because he was the best, and Krishna wanted to engage Arjuna, but not anyone else, because Krishna is the topmost Supreme Lord, and so he was the best in his service, right? And so this is the example that if you do what you were born for, you can easily forget about eating, sleeping, or anything else. You'll never be distracted, and you will enjoy the activity so much that you would not care about the results.
Yeah.
You would continue doing the activity even if that would mean no one would pay you for that. And you would continue doing the activity even if you would have to spend on that. Even if you would lose money, you would still do that because you enjoy it, right? And so this is the only way for the beginners. And this is what Prabhupada explains in the purport of the 10th Bhagavad Gita 10.10, that he speaks about it. He says, at the practicing stage, devotee enjoys the service, and on the mature state, he is enjoying love of Krishna. And so this is how it is happening, that first we need to enjoy serving Krishna. And so, not just once a week coming to the temple and doing religious observances, but we have to figure out what we were born for in this lifetime, what is our nature, and engage that nature in Krishna's service. And so then you wouldn't really care about whether you win or lose, because the process itself will give you pleasure. And you know, Krishna likes associating with happy people. He doesn't like, you know, like
Miserable.
yeah, depressed and people with problems. Even we, and Srila Prabhupada says that being, you know, like samples of Krishna, parts and parcels of Krishna, we can understand by our nature how Krishna is, right? And we don't want to associate with strange people, right? With depressed people and mentally disturbed people.
But we attract such people.
Yeah, then we'll have to ask ourselves the question, how come? How that happens? And so, if even we don't enjoy that, why Krishna should enjoy that? And Krishna is, we can understand, the person who doesn't have to go for the mediocre, he only wants the best. And so, yeah, if devotee is enjoying what he's doing, and you know, when you're not attached to the results for yourself, you can easily dedicate that to Krishna, right? Because Krishna, I'm enjoying so much, I don't care whether I will win or lose, whatever will happen, right? Like Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's life story is like a perfect illustration of what we're talking about. And he was fighting to get the Juhu land for the temple. And we know that it took a lot for Srila Prabhupada and for the devotees, etc., even physically. Fighting, you know, the devotees were dragged out, etc., beaten by police or someone. Anyway, that after all this struggle, and finally the devotees got the land. That was a really funny story how, you know, that Prabhupada, when Prabhupada got the news that Mr. Nair got the heart attack and died, he said, "Thank you, Nrsingadev, for answering my prayers." And when his wife tried to continue fighting with Srila Prabhupada, he asked, can't remember exactly what he said, but something like, "Do you know what happened to your husband? Are you interested in the same thing?"
Wow.
And she said, "Oh no, Swamiji, the land is yours. I have no claims." And he said, "Thank you." And so finally, you know, after all this hard struggle, when, you know, finally the very first class, Bhagavatam class, is happening at Juhu land, and Prabhupada addresses the devotees and he says, "Just see how fortunate we are that Krishna gave us such a wonderful piece of land without any struggle." And the devotees just couldn't believe it. But, you know, like Prabhupada's perception was different. What kind of struggle? We had a good fight for Krishna and we won, right? There was no struggle. It was easy, etc. And in the same way, when this, you know, New York lawyer, what was his name? Can't remember now. But when he tried to cheat the devotees and get $5,000 from them, and Srila Prabhupada warned that you should not trust this man. He is a cheat. And devotees still didn't listen to Srila Prabhupada and signed the contract, and they failed to read the small print, and when he told them that and gave him $5,000, and then, you know, after signing the contract, that man turned to them and he said, okay, now according to the contract you've signed, you have to pay the balance of the money, which was like $100,000. At the time it was probably
A lot of money.
more than $1 million, 20 times comparing to now. And he said you have like few months to pay the balance according to the contract. And the devotee said, how this is possible? How would we be able to pay that much money in such a short time? He said, well, I don't know, but this is in the contract you've signed. And they said, what if we won't be able to come up with this money? And then he said, well, you know, and he kind of smiled slightly and he said, in this case, you will lose your deposit and the building. And the devotees realized that he cheated them. And they contacted Srila Prabhupada and they said, Srila Prabhupada, we're very sorry, we didn't listen to you. Actually, you were right, this man was a cheat, and so we've lost $5,000. What do we do? And Srila Prabhupada, I think he was in San Francisco at the time, and he said, I'm coming. Someday he said, I'm coming to New York, I'll sort this matter out. We should, you know, take this matter to court. And so then they took it to court and they won. And they got you know, this lawyer to pay back $5,000. And nevertheless, devotees lost $200 something in court proceedings. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, you know, apologized to Srila Prabhupada. He said, because of our ignorance and, you know, not listening to you, we've lost more than $200 of your money. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, when you fight with the tiger, you don't count scratches. So for Srila Prabhupada, it was, you know, not a big deal. For him, it was learning experience for his young disciples. So he didn't take it very seriously. And so there are so many examples how Srila Prabhupada was not really bothered. You know, because if you count how many hardships Prabhupada had to go through, you know, like most of us would probably die of grief or something. You know, or lose faith in Krishna or something. He would have to go through all these things. But Prabhupada went through it without much difficulty because he had that nature. And so, anyway, somehow we're kind of discussing more of this topic because it's a kind of key topic for the Karma Yoga part of Bhagavad Gita, serving Krishna according to your nature. Shriyan Swadharma Vignan Paradharma Sunushtita. And, you know, when we're discussing with Narahari Prabhu, how do we ensure that the alumni from our school, ideal school, would actually achieve full success in leading their projects? Because what we are trying to encourage people to do is to become very innovative and very bold, and you know, it's not easy to establish yourself in a completely new field without much support. And he said it's really important to help the students or potential students to figure out what their nature is in the first place and figure out who they are, not just, you know, as a spirit soul, but what kind of mechanism or machine they received from Krishna in this lifetime and how to use that machine perfectly in Krishna service. So that's the subject which you can call personal mission or predestiny. And yeah, he said maybe even before we enroll students in the school, we could, you know, run a short training course on predestiny to kind of liberate the devotees from karmic jobs and give them much better future in terms of doing what they love doing and dedicating that to Krishna, because even financially that would be much more productive if you do something you put your heart into, right?
Yeah.
Rather than do something just for the sake of your salary, which is really torture if you think about it. And so, yeah,
Got a question.
yeah.
In Netra devotion, the definition of pure devotional service means to be free from fruitive activity or any sort of gyan. Isn't there a risk when mixing the professional life with Krishna conscious endeavor that you will, even though you're doing that professional life of Krishna conscious, you will be interested in the financial result of it? Somehow we found keeping the professional in terms of the getting money from working separate from Krishna consciousness allows you to do Krishna consciousness with that attitude of, I'm not getting paid to do this, I'm doing this because I want to do it. Is there a danger that by mixing the two, it will blur the lines and you'll end up introducing fruitive activity into Krishna consciousness and then it stops it becoming pure?
Well, what is purity? Purity means that you are free from any personal desires. And so it's simple. Prabhupada explains that, why devotees are not interested in sanctification. Thank you. Thank you, Alok. Hare Krishna. So why devotees are not interested in sanctification? Anyone remembers? What's the reason devotees are not interested in sanctification?
Higher taste.
That's right, yeah. Paramdrishtani vartate. So they have the higher taste, and so, it's like if you see the bum, it's hard to find it here, but, in some poor countries, developing countries, but maybe it's even in here, that you see the bum going into trash can and getting some scraps of food for his meal. And you can preach to this bum, what are you doing? This is dangerous, you may get sick, whatever. It's not clean. You can preach to him for ages. But, it's like, what can he do? Right? He's in the circumstances where this is the only option. But for us, we would be horrified to think that, to do that. Why? Because we have excellent quality food and it's also offered to Krishna, so we have best of the best, right? So if you have choice, then you won't go for the worst option. But if you don't have choice, what do you do? And so it's a model which helps us to understand that if in our own lives we have the choice, it's like one of the devotees I know, and he's quite successful businessman, good karma. In 26, when he turned 26, he became an owner of his, that's in Russia, so he had 7-figure business at 26, so we're talking about Russian money, so in pounds it would be 6-figure business, which is also not bad, right, for 26 years old boy. And he said, because I was so successful, I could fulfill all my dreams, like fast cars and properties and whatnot, and traveling anywhere, etc., etc. And then he said, still I was not happy. And the more I tried to enjoy, the more depressed I was becoming. And he said, because, I had no idea of spiritual life, but only when I came across Krishna consciousness, then everything started making sense. And so, and he said, my life was completely transformed, and there are so many people who are trying for material success, and they are really miserable. And so he said, I wish I could help all of you guys, whoever is in this situation, that you got everything you wanted but still not happy, and you wonder why, and I have the solutions for you. So he's still doing businesses, but he has much more money than he needs in his life, and he's still young. He's a little over 30 now, and he's telling me, I really want to make a difference in people's lives, and he's very good motivational speaker and coach by nature. So he went for training, he got some very expensive training. I think he paid like 7,000 pounds or something for online training course from California or something, etc. But he said it was good, even though this was the biggest amount he ever paid for training courses. Some of this stuff is really expensive.
Yeah.
But he can afford that. And so, it's only that much that money can buy. And it's only that much sense gratification can give you. And there is a bottom to it, and you can reach to the bottom pretty quickly. But I was thinking that his case is really good example of an ideal category we want our devotees to belong to. That even prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, they're already convinced that there is no happiness in the material world, that money cannot really buy any happiness, no matter how much you have, right? Of course, money can make things easier, can provide certain facilities and comfort, but if it is there, it just gets boring after a while. Because you need challenges in life, and if you don't have challenges, it's like, what's the life is for, etc. And so, this is what we're talking about. Because if you haven't got that experience in life of having everything, no matter how much you try to serve Krishna and surrender to Krishna, at the back of your mind, there will still be lingering thoughts. These guys who are driving these Porsche cars and living in these, huge houses. I wish I would be like that. Maybe then I would be happy, right? And that kind of thought, is kind of holding you back from really surrendering to Krishna without a shadow of a doubt. But if you have that experience, and so it's like I've noticed that the more serious devotee is in one's Krishna consciousness, the more, what do you say, that Krishna is giving results beyond that devotee's expectation. I mean, Srila Prabhupada's, of course, brilliant example, that he said, I was hoping for some result. I never expected to get that results. And so, it's basically a simple thing, Dharma Artha. That's, from Dharma comes Artha, right? And so the more serious you are in Dharma, the better you will be in Artha. But then the question is, how do you use Artha? because if you use artha for your karma, for your desires, then you forget Krishna because you focus on yourself. And so Dharma always produces artha, but then the big question is whether it is my karma or Krishna karma, right? Whether I fulfill my desires or Krishna's desires. So that's the thing. But, if Dharma is not producing artha, then something's wrong in the system.
I think the concept
There is a glitch somewhere.
is very good, because in London, because even me and Ravi Kiran were thinking about, he was there somewhere. In London, a lot of the technical people that works in banks they didn't want to be part of non-devotee companies, so they banded together and made companies just with devotee professionals in. And when they go to work, they wear tilak, they have dhoti kurta, they're in the offices, they're playing kirtan, and they've got their own offices. And it's a much more spiritual work environment. Yeah. And even me and Ravi Kiran, we're both software testers, and we're into automation. And we were thinking eventually to make our own company just of devotees, so that the association stays good. And
yeah,
it's a lovely idea.
Sure,
very good idea.
Thank you. All right, so that's. We went for a little long. And we never even read from Bhagavad Gita to start with, but introduction was a little bit extended. But so this is the idea of the first part of Bhagavad Gita, and basically it follows the what do you call it, Ashtanga Yoga description, because Bhakti Yoga is also yoga, and so even in the beginning of it, which is Karma Yoga, you still have the same 8 steps, which is Yama Niyama, Asana Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. And so Yama means, to get rid of everything which is bad. Yama, because Yama is Yamaraj, right? Death. Yama means death. So everything which leads to death, you have to relinquish that. You have to get rid of that. And so that's why the first step we call life without conflicts. How to live your life in such a way that you do not become influenced by any type of negativity, right? How to be always positive, because this is the only way to develop Krishna consciousness. To stay positive no matter what. And never have problems with anyone, even if others have problems with you. And the more successful you become, the more people will have problems with you. That's guaranteed. That's not avoidable at all. Because success creates a lot of envy and enmity. That's automatically, you think, what have I done to these people? But what you have done, you became more successful than them, and they hate that. And they tell you that up front. And so, but you got to live with it. You got to be Ajata Shatru, one whose enemy was never born. Even if people treat you like a trash, you feel happy with it. You say that, okay, it's Krishna's mercy. Helps me in many ways. And so then second is niyama, and niyama, I define that as believe in yourself, realize that you're not the body, which all the subsequent limitations, but you're a spirit soul with unlimited potential. Sky is the limit. If you serve Krishna, if the detail finds its place in the system, it creates amazing results. And so once we connect with the Supreme Lord, then you can see Srila Prabhupada's example and other acharyas, how much they've done once they surrendered unto Krishna. And so third one is asana. And asana, of course, in yoga means posture, but asana also means your position in life, your role in life. And then pranayama, breathing exercises, but prana means life. And so you start living when you start acting in your role, within your role in life. But asana also means our role in life is to sacrifice. Because once we focus on sacrifice, things become easy. I mean, there is not a single positive result have been achieved by any human being on the planet without the sacrifice. So sacrifice is compulsory. That's why the third chapter talks so much about the sacrifice. And so then pranayama, you find your personal mission, and pratyahara and dharana, withdrawing the senses and concentration, is focusing on achieving goals for Krishna. And dhyana and samadhi, that's connected to chapter 6, dhyana yoga, that's developing intuitive intelligence and basically being guided by the super soul, which represented externally by the guru. Right? But you need to be guided within, even in the physical absence of the guru. So that's the karma yoga. Then basically middle 6 chapters, bhakti yoga, are focused on relationships with Krishna and others as well, because others are also part of Krishna. You know, building perfect relationships, because this is where the biggest excitement comes. And rasa, this is what gives taste in life. And last 6, you know, like first 6 chapters, yoga of success, middle 6 chapters, yoga of love, and last 6 chapters I call yoga of wisdom, which means dealing with the false ego, which is very interesting. And basically speaking, first is achievements. First you achieve things, then you sustain everything through relationships. But then you guard your achievements by relinquishing the false ego. Because of the false ego, I mean, there have been so many people in the world who have achieved amazing results, but then they lost it all, right? Because they failed to work on themselves well enough. And so that's pretty much the whole thing.
Are you doing like a course on this?
Yeah, I've done training courses on the subject.
Is this something
over
that
the years.
you can do here?
Oh yeah,
Because
of course.
especially for like the young professionals, like a lot of us are going into areas where our careers are kind of blossoming.
Yeah.
And something like this is really important to keep us Krishna conscious throughout that period. Because we've seen others go through that, but they get lost in the success and then they become separated from Krishna consciousness because of that. And for a lot of us youngsters here that are going through it, would be very, very beneficial to go through this sort of course with yourself.
Of course, yeah. I mean, in a sense, you know, it's like because there are so many professional devotees in different fields, including personal development, in the world nowadays, that I'm really nothing special. But you know, the school we've organized, which is Ideal School, it's not yet ideal, but the acronym is Ideal. So, because we're focusing on innovational developments. Basically, you know, creating as many novel ways of helping people to connect to Krishna and devotional service and principles of spiritual development as we can possibly come up with. And that can give everything to everybody. And we have amazing team of the devotees teaching that and running those training courses. I mean, some of the devotees you would know. Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, he's teaching
Very good.
the course on multi-faith cooperation, and Anuttama Prabhu communications, which is very important if you run your own project. And Urmila Devi, who is also a PhD, she's teaching a couple of things. One is called Switch, and the other one is environmental scanning, which basically means that what do you do to influence people on massive scale about anything, and how do you, find the entry points into the society, which is powerful. And we have Padmalochan Krishna Prabhu from Singapore. None of you ever heard of, but he's the regional director of Harvard Business School. And he's organizing Harvard business courses in 12 countries in Southeast Asia. And because I've been visiting, sometimes discoveries happen without you planning, like the gift of Krishna, because I was looking for potential faculty members for our school. So I've been coming to Singapore for many years. And so then, the leader of Yatra, he tells, well, this time you'll be staying in a house of one devotee. He wants to host you. And Singapore is a very interesting place. Any car you buy in Singapore is 4 times quadruple price to what you pay in UK, for example, right? And property prices are, from science fiction. It's like unbelievable. It's like a small flat you're looking at around $1 million. And house means millions. And so, like anyone who owns a house in Singapore, that automatically means multimillionaire. So basically, just with this small comment, he says you'll be staying in a house of a devotee. I automatically know that this devotee is a multimillionaire. So that devotee receives me, and it's like very luxurious 6-story house, and he puts me in very nice room, and extremely humble devotee, and his wife is cooking prasadam, and I'm taking prasadam. He is reading something from Prabhupada's books for me. I'm looking at him, and I'm wondering, like, what are you doing for your living? And he said, oh, this is nothing special, this and that. I said, but still, I'm a little bit interested. He said, oh, okay. Little bit business. What kind of business? He said, I've done business on my own before, but now I'm doing business with Harvard Business School. I'm selling their courses. And I said, are you teaching also? He said, yeah, I can teach. Kind of South Indian background, but Singaporean of fourth generation, I think, Singaporean. Anyway, I said, why don't you come to our school? Because we're looking for faculty members. So he came to the school and he taught the course, and which is authentic leadership, by the way. And one devotee who was a student, he's a medical doctor from Nepal, very powerful leader as well. And he got excited. He said, wow, this is such a, cutting edge, materials we're learning. with this devotee Padmalochan Krishna, I would like to continue learning. So he said, can I learn more from Harvard Business Materials? He said, yeah, no problem. I can enroll you in basic course, which is for 2 months, and the cost is $80,000 for 2 months. Right? If you do your math, it's about a couple of thousand quid a day, right? And probably they don't teach every day also. So this is the level of the value. But he comes to our school and basically he's doing that for free. You know, the only thing we are asking students for is to cover their living and prasadam expenses and help us with covering the airfares for the faculty members for 2 months. And so yeah, it's kind of symbolic. But we're trying to attract the best faculty members who are very successful themselves and they share their secrets of success with our students. And so, you know, it's like being so distracted in the modern environment and trying to learn something is very difficult. So we kind of recommend that those who are interested to seriously change everything for themselves in their lives in terms of professional Krishna conscious or spiritual development, that they enroll in our school. Of course, it's a bit of a sacrifice, you know, like taking away a couple of months. But, you know, in the holiest of all the abodes, you can get training from the topmost teachers available in ISKCON world, and that's professional, not just shastric. It's very practical, and be in the company of the best students as well, because they're all professionals and they're all leaders and very ambitious people trying to make something happen, and they do, and we have quite impressive success stories from our alumni. So yeah, I think that's the best option, because this is what I'm focusing on right now. Yeah, my understanding is that our success as a movement really, really depends on individual success of each devotee, and that success is defined, you know, we're talking about the success because this is the first and foremost thing to kind of sort out in life, and that success is defined on physical, emotional, because emotional and mental, that's connected, right? Physical, emotional, intellectual, social, because social is connected to the ego, financial as an additional part, and then spiritual. And Bhakti Thakur says in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, I believe, that unless and until one achieves success on all the preliminary levels, it's really hard to develop spiritually. You know, because all these things will be dragging you down. Like if you are not healthy, or if you have conflicts with other people, you know, emotionally you'll be down, and it will be very hard for you to kind of be happy in Krishna consciousness, and etc., etc. Or if socially you're not situated, you know, you're overly dependent from other people, and that will prevent you from your spiritual development. So all these things, they will become like anchors holding you back. So that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur says these things first, and then Krishna consciousness automatically follows. It's like the foundation, and then Krishna consciousness is very nice building you can build with it. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Withers.
What the answers?
Thank you for that. It was very, very fresh approach to Bhagavad Gita. Fantastic. And if you really put it down to our level, the world we are engaged in. Because I like when you said that even within ISKCON we are tending to turn it into this religious ritualistic activity.
Mhm.
That's what it's you're right about that. And that's something that we are battling with as leaders of this yatra, about how to motivate people to pull away from that thinking.
Yeah.
Because that's not what Prabhupada gave us. Going to these activities in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
How we do it. But it's just a challenge, and I'm just thankful that you explained in such a way that I could really get the message. I mean, I say, because we get trapped thinking that we're doing okay. As devotees, we think, because we fall into this trap, we think we're doing okay. We are conditioned of thinking we're doing okay. We're on the right path. We will get Krishna. But then lately I've been saying to my classes and people, I says, if Krishna was giving a job interview, because that's what we're used to it. We used to want good careers, good money. Then we have to apply for good jobs then. We have interviews. If Krishna was giving an interview, would any of us pass?
Mm.
No.
No.
None of us would be, he wouldn't employ any of us. We have got the right qualities, right qualifications to be with him.
Right. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm just appreciating that, and I just wanted to thank you for that actually.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And backing up what Guru said, that we want you to keep coming back here. Maybe if there's a longer period, we can have a seminar.
We would like.
If we have information from you.
Yeah, actually, this is what Narahari suggested, that maybe we come to the place and do a short kind of training course, kind of teaser,
Yeah.
and then get people enrolled in the school.
Could you not do like some of the things like web learning as well? Because
Web learning, yes. Considering that I'm not very enthusiastic about the idea for one quite serious reason that, well, first of all, web means, you won't be living in Mayapur.
Yeah.
But second is that the kind of interaction and relationship which we want, devotees to build between themselves, students and the faculty members, are not really possible to do online because it's kind of limiting. And so rather than doing that, we've decided that it would be better to branch out and open branches of the ideal school in different countries. And yeah, because it's like everything's online to such an extent that people don't want to see each other face to face anymore. It actually creates some psychological disorders that people want to interact on social media, but they don't want to interact physically anymore, which is crazy. And so yeah, there is a possibility that maybe something will be online, but
something like Plural Site. That's like a lot of professionals use a website called Plural Site. They have loads, like a huge library of training courses, and different, like when you've got different faculties of learning can go and upload their stuff to there, and it's like a subscription site. A lot of professionals, you guys know Plural Site, don't you?
Yeah.
You guys have used Plural Site, so it's something like, because of the unique angle that you've got coming from the Krishna conscious perspective, something like that is a great way to reach like massive. It's like that mass education approach. That eventually, something like Plural Sight, you can have recorded lessons on there, and then there's the option to contact the tutor if needed and stuff like that. Stuff like that for professionals. Everyone they use Plural Sight so regularly, and it'd be a great, because obviously not everyone can go to Mayapur. We can't. People that are married and if they have kids and stuff, you can't get away. For someone that's not married and not even working, it's easy to go to Mayapur.
It's true.
Well, maybe in the future.
Thank you.
Maharaj, when we read Prabhupada's books and lectures, most of the time it says that controlling the senses and desires is the essence of most of the lectures that Prabhupada quoted. So even in spite of hearing so many times, still we feel that I'm not up to that level. So what is the right time to go and preach outside? Because most of the time we get a feeling that, so I'm not in a position to control my senses and desires. How could I go outside and preach others without following myself? So what is the right point that one would know that, I'm learned enough thing, now I can go and outside preach it?
Yeah, the difficulty is with English language, which, is not really adequate to translate the terms given to us by our acharyas. Same like, Dharma, to translate Dharma as religion is very vague and very inaccurate translation. So in the same way, Prabhupada used that word preaching for the lack of better translation. But Madhvananda Prabhu gave a whole class on the subject, how preaching is not exactly what prachar means, because prachar means, sharing would be much better word than preaching. Sharing Krishna consciousness with other people. And so, because preaching, we're so used to seeing those, Christian preachers on the street corners who are like shouting and screaming at people, that if you don't accept Jesus, you go to hell and all this. I've seen one of those guys in Northern Ireland, and they have this, kind of thing in the language, in the accent, that they, like Bengalis, they replace S with Sha, and so he says, he preached his thing, like he's shouting and screaming, nobody pays attention, everyone passing by. But then, he paused and he said, you need to be shaved. And I was thinking, I need to be shaved, that's true. So, it's like not very relevant preaching. And so when we see those kind of models of preaching, and subconsciously we think that, Krishna consciousness is also has to be something like that, superimposed on people, right? So, but it's a very wrong model, it's a very wrong approach. And sharing is much better word.
Sometimes use the word outreach.
Outreach, that's right. That's much better word. That many devotees, many leaders, they recognizing that preaching is not the good word for what we're trying to do. And the best model, and I think that's an introduction to Prabhupada's book. Mukunda Maharaj explains that when Srila Prabhupada arrived to New York, which was a very bold move, he knew practically nobody, and it was like leap in the abyss for him. And so then it didn't really make sense if he would start like preaching Krishna consciousness, because it's like people had no idea who he is, what does sannyas means, who is guru, and like people were even asking, what is this funny rope on your chest? And he had to explain, oh, this is Brahman thread. What does it mean? That means I've accepted spiritual master, something like that. So people had zero idea who he is and what he's about, right? And plus people were not really much interested in God. And so what Srila Prabhupada did, because sannyasi means Brahmana automatically, and so Brahminical occupation is teaching and training, right? And so he started conducting courses on Vedic philosophy, ancient Indian spiritual philosophy, and Sanskrit. Then, because so many people are interested in philosophy and languages. And then he started doing courses on music and singing traditional songs, Indian songs. Then the other course he did was on cooking. And many people started coming. So he started doing these different courses. And different people started coming. So these were his first students. Some of them who they later became his disciples, right? And on those bases, he could share Krishna conscious understanding with them and establish the rapport, the relationship with them. And so for us, this is the topmost model, the practical model, how we can share Krishna consciousness with other people through professional activity rather than religious approach, having religious approach. That is my religion, which is better than any other religion, and I'll prove to you. Which doesn't really work well. Yes?
Maharaj, how does it fit into what Prabhupada said about daily Varna, but propagated that now ISKCON means to start the daily Varna? How does this fit into that?
That's right, yes, good question. That he said this is 50% of his mission unaccomplished, right? Which is very interesting. We see Srila Prabhupada to be so madly successful, but he saw himself as a failure, that half of the mission was not accomplished. And he said, that I want you to complete that 50% of the mission. And of course, there are certain views, and we're not saying these views are wrong because they are connected to what Prabhupada was saying towards the end of his life. That the devotees should not be staying in cities, they should be moving out and establishing, what is it called, sustainable communities, etc., etc. And actually, if you look at the history of ISKCON and Prabhupada's activities, it's a little bit surprising that towards the end of his life, he kind of shifted his focus so much on rural communities, right? Because, like all the previous years, his focus was big cities, right? And he actually, when he first came, he was in a small town, Butler, in Pennsylvania. And after a while, because in small towns, people don't have much to get distracted with. And so, real Indian Swami in this provincial town was a big news, right? And after a very short while, he became a kind of star of Butler, right? He became kind of celebrity in there. and he was invited everywhere, etc., etc., and people were appreciating him more and more and more. And so, after struggling so much, finally you get your success, your mission is flourishing. What else do you need? And then what Prabhupada does next, he drops it all and goes to New York, where he knows nobody, right? Because he didn't come to America for Butler, Pennsylvania, right? He came for the world, and he knew, if I succeed anywhere, that would be New York, because I get New York, I get America, I get America, I get the planet. And it was precise calculation, because historically, if you look at it, New York, Prabhupada disciples spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, right? They facilitated his mission. Because New Yorkers, anyone who dealt with them knows, they kind of have this total conviction that this world belongs to them. Not a shadow of a doubt, right? That they own this world, and the whole world owes them a favor. But, Prabhupada was very, expert playing that sentiment and directing it in Krishna consciousness. And so, anyway, basic point was that Prabhupada was interested in big cities and key audiences, etc. But then, strangely, he shifted into farm communities at, I think it was the last year of his life, right? That pretty much, I have to check, but yeah, either last or one before the last. Before that, he was kind of mentioning that here and there, but it was not the focus. But then suddenly it became the focus at the end, and I listened to some of his classes, because it's really important to understand the intention of Srila Prabhupada behind whatever he says, because it's been a huge source of the conflicts between the devotees, that they would take one quote of Srila Prabhupada, and even the scholars, they notice that at Hare Krishnas, they're ready to kind of kill each other with Prabhupada's quotes from both sides. One devotee armed with Prabhupada quotes, like full quiver of Prabhupada's quotes behind the back, and the other devotee, his quiver is even more full, and they start shooting at each other, like Shastra. Machine gun preaching. And it leads nowhere, right? Absolutely nowhere. That the only result is that they kind of fry each other. And but it's really important to understand the context and the intention in which Prabhupada said one or the other thing, because oftentimes the quotes are very contradictory, right? That in one circumstance Prabhupada said something, in the other circumstance Prabhupada said completely opposite thing, right? And that confuses the devotees. Is it right or left, or is it top or bottom? Is it good or bad? It's like very confusing. But if you put it in the context, right, it becomes crystal clear. And by listening more to what Srila Prabhupada explains, I figured out why. And I might be wrong, but I have my reasons to believe that. Because Prabhupada could not contradict himself. And so, in order to make sense out of what he was focusing on in terms of farm communities, he was saying, even though he was not directly connecting that, maybe there are quotes, because I haven't listened or read everything Prabhupada said. He was saying that in Varnashram Dharma, only Shudras, only the lowest level of the society would be employed. And because they have no brain. to run their own lives. They need master. They need someone who kind of arranges and provides for them. But everybody else, all the little bit more intelligent people, they're all self-employed. And then Srila Prabhupada have seen that, you work for someone who is not even Krishna conscious. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the worst type of, and it's kind of not very pleasant truth, but nevertheless, I think it's good to keep that in mind. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that a satsanga, bad association, does not mean that you come in touch with people, like you go to the shop or market, he says, right? And buy things. This seller may not be chanting Hare Krishna or may not even be vegetarian necessarily, right? But you just get your goods, you pay your money, and that's it. It's just a surface contact which does not affect your consciousness. And so he explains that in Bhakti Loka. But the bad association is when you connect with the person on a very deep level and you trust that person and you form very close relationship with the person, then this is when association happens. And he says, basically opening yourself to that, opening your heart, opening your mind. And basically, if you think about it, if you work for someone, you have to really absorb your consciousness into the thinking of that person, because it really depends how much you please that person, your boss, that much salary you get, right? And so if that person is not a devotee, by opening up your consciousness to that person, you share all his or her problems, right? And so, this is what actually Prabhupada saw, that his disciples, they get really badly affected by bad association, by materialistic association in the cities, because devotees would get employed, right? And so they would just leave Krishna consciousness after a while. And then Prabhupada started promoting farm communities, because he saw it as a solution for shifting from employed to self-employed mode, right? But farm communities cannot be fully fledged varnashram, because farm communities means grihastas and vaishyas, right? Two components out of 8. But varnashram means much more than that. And where do you fit sannyasis, brahmanas, kshatriyas into farm communities, right? The top level of the society. So that's why varnashram, kind of understanding that farm communities, that's the whole varnashram, is very curtailed, is very limited understanding. And so the real understanding is that cities and farm communities and everything, because Prabhupada wanted everything. And so, and actually he makes it very clear already in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where real varnashram starts. And how do we spread Krishna consciousness? What is the real way to spread Krishna consciousness? Anyone's interested to know?
Yes.
What's the most effective way to spread Krishna consciousness? That's coming in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 17, which is the punishment and reward of Kali. And it's coming at the very end of the very last verse of the chapter. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, this is like a conclusion from the whole thing, right? About Kali Yuga and its influence, which really prevents us from becoming Krishna conscious, apparently. And so he says the following thing, listen carefully, without state support, state means government, right? No doctrines or philosophy or religious principles can progressively advance. There should be complete cooperation between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas for this common good. Even up to Maharaja Ashoka, the same spirit was prevailing. Lord Buddha was sufficiently supported by King Ashoka, and thus his particular cult of knowledge was spread all over the world. So let me see the show of hands. How many of you want Krishna consciousness not just spread thin as it is now, but really established very solidly and very soundly all over the planet? Okay. So Prabhupada explains where the real Varnashram starts, when Brahmanas and Kshatriyas are cooperating for the common good of the population. Brahmanas means spiritual leaders and Kshatriyas means political leaders, and they have to work hand in hand. And this is the secret, which is tying back to the first purpose of ISKCON. Actually, first canto reveals many secrets for why the first purpose of ISKCON is first and not second, and what to speak of last. But I don't know how many of you even remember the first purpose of ISKCON.
To systematically propagate
Huh?
systematically propagate the
Spiritual knowledge to society, systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and teach all peoples, in plural, right? Not people, but peoples, all humanity, in the techniques of spiritual life, in order to check the imbalance of values in life, which is a very lofty way to say help people to solve their problems, and achieve real unity and peace in the world. And Damodar Prabhu, whom many of you would know from older generation, he used to be TP at the manor for a while in 80s. He is, by the way, also one of the faculty members in our school. And he made an interesting comment that this first purpose of ISKCON does not even have the word God in it, what to speak of Krishna. Because Srila Prabhupada's vision was all-encompassing, including all religions and all peoples, all the nations, regardless of their position or tradition, because Krishna conscious principles are universal. And we actually have what every single soul needs in this world. Not even human beings, but every single living entity, because every single living entity needs attention, care, and love, right? And so we've got love of God, which is the topmost level of everything. And so the only way, people seem to be not interested in that because we fail to present it in understandable and practical way. That's the only reason. Yeah,
right.
no worries.
Just you in your class you mentioned about a question that how can we do service without expecting results, right? And I just want to clarify my understanding. What I understood was that you come into a state where you're enjoying your service, where you don't expect anything. You're not bothered about that. Is that my understanding correct?
Yes. If you enjoy the process, you don't care about the results.
Thank you.
That's good. One of the processes is prashadam.
Okay. That's a subtle hint that we should wrap up. Thank you. So, if anyone is interested to know a little more about our school and training courses and all, you can approach us individually, myself and Narahari Brahma. Alright, so we'll finish here. Thank you all very much.